The four men exchanged glances that confirmed Elena's assessment of their coordination and experience with intimidation. They had obviously encountered resistance before and had developed protocols for escalating pressure until compliance was achieved. The leader gestured slightly to his associates, who began shifting position in the practiced movement of people preparing to demonstrate that their threats were backed by capability. "Mrs. Vasquez, you're making this unnecessarily difficult. We're prepared to be quite generous with our compensation, but our patience isn't unlimited." Elena noted their positions while mentally cataloging the resources available in her cafe. Behind the espresso machine, industrial-grade steaming wands that operated at temperatures capable of causing severe burns. Near the register, a cash drawer that contained not only daily receipts, but also items that appeared to be normal business supplies, but served dual purposes for someone with her background. Throughout the seating area, furniture that could be repositioned to create barriers or improvised weapons. Most importantly, Elena's key card provided access to the back office where her employees were safely positioned and where certain items were stored that wouldn't be found in ordinary coffee shops. "I'm afraid you've misunderstood the situation," Elena said quietly, her voice carrying the kind of authority that belonged to someone accustomed to command rather than customer service. "This cafe is under my protection, as are the young women who work here. You have 10 seconds to leave voluntarily." The leader laughed, a harsh sound that violated the cafe's peaceful atmosphere. "Lady, I don't know what kind of tough girl fantasy you're living, but you're a coffee shop owner facing 4 men who don't take no for an answer." Elena's transformation was subtle but absolute. Her posture shifted from welcoming business owner to tactical operator. Her movements became economical and purposeful. Her eyes acquired the kind of focused intensity that belonged to someone who had made life and death decisions under pressure and was prepared to do so again. "Actually," she said with quiet certainty, "I'm a former Army military police captain who spent 16 years specializing in human trafficking interdiction, and you just threatened the women under my protection." The leader's confidence wavered as he processed this information, but his associates were already moving toward threatening positions. Elena had anticipated this response and was already implementing her counter-operation. She moved to the espresso machine with fluid efficiency, her right hand finding the industrial steaming wand while her left retrieved items from beneath the counter that appeared to be cleaning supplies but served more tactical purposes for someone with her training. The first associate reached for what was probably a concealed weapon, but Elena's response was faster, more precise, and backed by 16 years of experience in neutralizing threats to innocent civilians. The steaming wand, operating at over 250 degrees Fahrenheit, created an effective deterrent when properly deployed. The improvised chemical irritant, ammonia-based cleaning solution in a spray bottle, provided area denial capabilities that forced the other associates to reconsider their positioning. Elena's movement between obstacles, tables, chairs, the espresso machine, demonstrated tactical awareness that belonged in military training manuals rather than customer service protocols. The leader found himself isolated, his associates neutralized or retreating, facing someone who had just demonstrated that his assumptions about vulnerable coffee shop owners were dangerously inaccurate. "What the hell are you?" he managed. Elena looked at him with the same gentle expression she used when helping customers choose pastries. "I'm someone who protects young women from people like you. And you're going to leave my cafe, leave this city, and never threaten anyone under my protection again." The conviction in her voice was so absolute that the leader took an involuntary step backward, suddenly understanding that he had encountered someone whose commitment to protection exceeded his organization's capacity for intimidation. The Portland Police Department's Human Trafficking Task Force arrived at Cafe Luna 47 minutes after Elena's call, expecting to process a routine intimidation case and instead discovering evidence of an international criminal organization that had been operating throughout the Pacific Northwest for over 3 years. Detective Sarah Martinez led the response team, assisted by FBI Special Agent Michael Chen and representatives from Immigration and Customs Enforcement who had been tracking similar patterns in other cities. They found 4 men in various states of consciousness and restraint, subdued through techniques that spoke to professional training rather than civilian self-defense. Elena sat calmly behind her espresso machine, completing paperwork while her employees served coffee to the police officers and federal agents who were processing what had become a major crime scene. To observe her during the debriefing was to witness someone who understood exactly how to interact with law enforcement during complex investigations. "Captain Vasquez," Detective Martinez said, using Elena's former rank after reviewing her military service record. "What you've uncovered here extends far beyond a single incident." Elena nodded, continuing to organize receipts while providing detailed intelligence about the trafficking organization's methodology. The leader mentioned partnerships with several establishments throughout the region. Based on their confidence and systematic approach, I'd estimate they've been recruiting successfully for an extended period. "How were you able to neutralize 4 subjects without anyone sustaining serious injury?" Agent Chen asked, noting the professional restraint that had been applied to the suspects. 16 years of military police training," Elena replied simply. "When you've spent that much time learning to protect people from threats, the skills tend to remain available when circumstances require them." The investigation that followed Elena's initial report would ultimately expose a trafficking network responsible for the exploitation of over 200 women across 11 states. The café incident had provided law enforcement with direct access to organizational structure, communication methods, and operational procedures that led to arrests in 6 cities and the rescue of dozens of victims. But for Elena, the most important outcome was much simpler. Her employees were safe, her café remained a sanctuary, and the young women she'd chosen to protect could continue building their lives without fear of predators who viewed them as commodities. "Mrs. Vasquez," Detective Martinez said as the formal debriefing concluded, "we need to discuss your current situation. Your actions today have likely saved dozens of lives, but they've also revealed capabilities that certain parties might find interesting." Elena understood the implication. Her successful counter-operation against professional traffickers would generate attention from law enforcement agencies, criminal organizations, and potentially hostile parties who might view her as either an asset or a threat. "What are you suggesting?" she asked. "Consultation work," Agent Chen explained. "Part-time, strictly voluntary, focused on human trafficking prevention and victim support services. You'd maintain your current business, but provide training and assessment services for situations that require someone with your particular expertise." Elena looked around her café, noting the way Maria Santos was confidently handling the afternoon rush, while Jennifer Kim trained a new employee with patient encouragement. These young women had flourished under her protection, growing from vulnerable individuals into confident adults who were building successful lives. "What would this consultation involve?" Elena asked. "Training business owners to recognize trafficking recruitment attempts," Detective Martinez said. "Developing safety protocols for establishments that employ vulnerable populations. Providing support services for trafficking survivors who need employment opportunities with understanding employers. And if situations develop that require more direct intervention, then we'll be grateful to have someone with your capabilities available to respond," Agent Chen said simply. Elena made her decision based on the understanding that other young women in other cities faced the same threats that had just been directed at her employees, and that her unique combination of military training and civilian business experience could provide protection that traditional law enforcement couldn't offer. "What do you need me to do?" 6 months later, Café Luna had become more than a neighborhood coffee shop. It had transformed into a model for how businesses could serve as safe havens for vulnerable populations while actively preventing human trafficking recruitment. Elena still served perfect lattes and provided the warm welcome that had made her café a community gathering place. But she also operated an informal network that protected young women throughout the Pacific Northwest. The consultation work had developed naturally from Elena's established relationships with other business owners, social service agencies, and law enforcement organizations. She provided training that helped restaurant managers, retail supervisors, and service industry employers recognize the signs of trafficking recruitment while creating work environments that supported rather than exploited vulnerable employees. Elena's approach was distinctly different from traditional law enforcement or social service methodologies. She understood both the tactical aspects of trafficking operations and the psychological needs of potential victims. Her café served as a demonstration site where other business owners could observe how protective employment practices created environments that were inherently resistant to criminal exploitation. The key, Elena explained to a group of 23 business owners from across Oregon, isn't to turn your establishment into a fortress. It's to create the kind of supportive community where predators can't operate effectively. The training sessions were held in the cafe after regular business hours, with Elena's employees serving as both examples and instructors. Maria Santos, now 21 and pursuing a degree in social work, shared her perspective on what had made Café Luna feel safe when she'd been aging out of foster care with no family support. Jennifer Kim described how flexible scheduling and patient management had allowed her to complete her nursing degree while supporting her disabled mother. When employers treat you like family, Jennifer explained to the group, it becomes impossible for outsiders to convince you that your real family doesn't care about your welfare. Elena's military background remained relevant, but was integrated into her civilian mission in ways that enhanced rather than dominated her approach. She taught threat recognition and emergency communication protocols, but emphasized that protection was most effective when it was built into daily operations rather than imposed as additional security measures. The network that developed around Elena's work included safe houses operated by former trafficking victims, employment programs specifically designed for survivors, and a communication system that allowed businesses throughout the region to share information about suspicious recruitment attempts. But Elena's most important work remained the daily operation of Café Luna, where she continued to provide employment opportunities for young women who needed more than paychecks. They needed someone who understood that protection was an ongoing commitment rather than a one-time intervention. Her newest employee was Cristina Rodriguez, 18 years old, who had been rescued from a trafficking operation in Los Angeles and relocated to Portland through federal witness protection programs. Cristina was learning barista skills while attending community college, building the kind of normal life that had seemed impossible 6 months earlier. Elena saved my life, Cristina told a documentary crew that was filming a story about innovative approaches to trafficking prevention. Not just by giving me a job, but by showing me what it looks like when adults actually protect young people instead of exploiting them. Elena's Cafe had become a symbol of how civilian businesses could serve as frontline defense against human trafficking while maintaining the kind of welcoming atmosphere that made communities stronger rather than more fearful. 2 years after the cafe incident, Elena Williams had developed a reputation that extended throughout the anti-trafficking community. She was invited to speak at conferences, consulted with federal agencies developing new prevention strategies, and served as a model for how military veterans could transition their protective capabilities into civilian applications that strengthened communities rather than militarizing them. But her most significant impact remained local and personal. Café Luna had become the anchor point for a network of businesses throughout Portland that employed trafficking survivors, provided safe work environments for vulnerable populations, and maintained communication systems that allowed rapid response to emerging threats. The young women Elena had protected had become protectors themselves. Maria Santos was completing her social work degree and planned to specialize in services for aging out foster youth. Jennifer Kim had finished nursing school and accepted a position at a clinic that provided medical care for trafficking survivors. Sarah Williams had completed her business degree and was opening a second location that would expand Elena's model to a different neighborhood. Elena's work had attracted attention from unexpected sources. A coalition of military veterans was developing similar programs in other cities, using coffee shops, restaurants, and retail businesses as cover for anti-trafficking operations that operated outside traditional law enforcement channels. The approach was proving effective because it addressed prevention rather than reaction, building community resistance to trafficking recruitment before criminal organizations could establish operations. The most effective counter-operations, Elena explained to a conference of military veterans interested in civilian security applications, are the ones that make criminal activity impossible rather than just illegal. The café itself had evolved to accommodate its expanded mission while maintaining the welcoming atmosphere that made it successful as both a business and a sanctuary. The back office now included communication equipment that connected Elena to law enforcement networks, social service agencies, and other businesses in her informal protection network. The employee break room doubled as a training facility where young women learned not only customer service skills, but also threat recognition and personal safety techniques. Elena had installed security measures that were invisible to customers but provided comprehensive protection for her employees. The positioning of tables and equipment created natural barriers that would channel any threats toward areas where Elena could respond most effectively. The sound system included emergency alert capabilities that could summon immediate assistance without alarming customers. And Elena herself maintained the kind of constant awareness that had protected military personnel in far more dangerous environments. But the café's greatest protection remained the community that had developed around Elena's mission. Customers included off-duty police officers, social workers, therapists, and other business owners who understood that they were part of an informal network dedicated to protecting vulnerable populations. The atmosphere was genuinely warm and welcoming, but it was also clearly protected by people who would respond immediately to any threats against the young women who worked there. Elena's military training had been successfully integrated into a civilian mission that felt more important than any assignment she had received during her 16 years of service. She was using skills developed for national security purposes to provide personal security for individual young women whose lives might otherwise have been destroyed by predators who viewed them as profitable commodities. 4 years after the trafficking incident, Café Luna hosted a celebration that demonstrated how protection could transform not only individual lives but entire communities. Maria Santos was graduating from college with a degree in social work and a job offer from the federal agency that coordinated anti-trafficking operations. Jennifer Kim had been accepted into a master's degree program that would qualify her to provide specialized trauma therapy for trafficking survivors. The party filled the café with laughter, music, and the kind of genuine joy that came from witnessing young women who had once been vulnerable achieve goals that would have seemed impossible when they first walked through Elena's door seeking employment and safety. Elena moved through the celebration with the same warm efficiency she brought to daily café operations, ensuring that everyone had enough food and drink while observing the interactions that demonstrated how her informal protection network had evolved into a genuine community of mutual support. Detective Sarah Martinez approached Elena near the espresso machine, holding a cup of coffee that she probably didn't need but which provided a reason to have a private conversation. "Elena, I wanted to let you know. The trafficking network you helped us expose has been completely dismantled. The final arrests were made last week in Seattle." Elena nodded, feeling satisfaction that was tempered by the understanding that other criminal organizations would attempt to fill the vacuum left by the disrupted network. "How many victims were recovered?" 237 women and girls, Detective Martinez replied. "Ages ranging from 14 to 28. All of them are receiving support services, and most are successfully rebuilding their lives." Elena looked around the café at the young women who were celebrating achievements that represented victory over circumstances that could have led them toward exactly the kind of exploitation they had helped prevent for others. The work would never be finished, but individual victories were worth celebrating. "Detective," Elena said quietly, "do you think we're making a real difference?" Detective Martinez gestured toward Maria Santos, who was surrounded by friends and family celebrating her college graduation and upcoming career in social work. "Elena, that young woman was aging out of foster care with no support system when you hired her 4 years ago. Today she's starting a career dedicated to protecting other vulnerable young people." She pointed toward Jennifer Kim, who was describing her plans to specialize in trauma therapy for trafficking survivors. Jennifer was working multiple jobs to support her disabled mother while trying to complete nursing school. Now she's pursuing advanced education that will allow her to provide healing services for women who've survived exactly the kind of exploitation you helped prevent.